Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company.
That's right.
You, our listener, pointed us to their 2023 business overview, the audited financials, and their Wikipedia page for background.
A good mix of sources.
So the mission today is really to understand what went down in, well, what TSMC called a tough 2023. And crucially, where they're headed, especially with AI just exploding everywhere. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, absolutely. You've given us a great set here. We've got TSMC's own perspective from the overview, the hard numbers and the financials, and then Wikipedia gives us that sort of origin story, how they became such a giant.
It's a really key player.
Hugely important. So yeah, a comprehensive look.
And they didn't exactly sugarcoat 2023 in that overview, did they? They called it a challenging year for the whole semiconductor industry.
They did, yeah. Straight up about it. They pointed to a few big pressures.
Like what specifically?
Well, the sort of lingering effects from the pandemic slowdown, that combined with just weaker global economic conditions overall.
Right.
And then add rising inflation, higher interest rates, it all kind of dragged out what they called the semiconductor inventory adjustment cycle.
So companies just had too many chips sitting around for a while.
Pretty much, yeah. A bit of a perfect storm, really. Made things tough for chip makers.
But even saying all that, TSMC sounded pretty confident about how they handled it. They actually said their technology leadership enabled TSMC to outperform the foundry industry in 2023.
That's a strong claim.
It is bold.
It is, but, looking at the results and what they're forecasting, there seems to be a solid basis for it. The really interesting part is how they managed it, right? And a massive piece of that puzzle, in their view at least, is generative AI.
Ah, yes. AI. That was a huge theme, wasn't it? They really leaned into the rising emergence of generative AI-related applications.
Definitely. Positioning themselves as a key enabler.
And they mentioned ChatGPT hitting, 100 million users in just 2 months? That's just phenomenal speed.
Incredible adoption. And TSMC, they're looking beyond just the consumer buzz. They're pointing out, quite rightly, the fundamental shift it means for semiconductors.
How so?
Well, generative AI needs, and this is their phrase, high computing power and interconnect bandwidth.
Okay.
Think about it. These models are doing incredibly complex stuff. They need loads of powerful chips, all working together super efficiently.
So that directly translates into more demand for the really advanced chips.
Exactly. A surge in demand for sophisticated silicon.
And TSMC thinks they're perfectly placed for this. They had that quote, all roads lead to working with TSMC for AI chips.
Yeah, quite a statement. But look at their strength. It does carry weight. They talk about their leading-edge tech, making the tiniest, most powerful transistors.
Their advanced packaging to connect them all.
Right, that's crucial. Plus a big design ecosystem, and importantly, high yields, even on really complex, large chips. All vital for AI processors.
And it ties into their focus on energy efficiency too, right?
Absolutely. AI needs efficient computing, and that's been TSMC's focus for ages. So, like they said, the value of our technology position is increasing.
They even coined a term for it, the Trinity of Strengths. Can you break that down?
Sure. It's 3 pillars, basically. 1, be a technology leader, right up there with the big IDMs, the ones who design and make chips.
That's okay.
2, be the absolute manufacturing leader scale, efficiency, quality, undisputed.
And the
3rd, be the most reputable, service-focused foundry, giving customers the best overall value. It's, a comprehensive approach. It's their foundation.
And you can really see the tech leadership in their revenue numbers. They said about 70% of 2023 revenue came from 16 nanometer and more advanced nodes.
That's right. And that share is set to grow with 3 nanometers and 2 nanometers coming online. We're talking incredibly small features here, billionths of a meter.
While the older, mature nodes are still significant, around 20%.
Yeah, about 20%. But their strategy there isn't just churning out old chips. They're focusing on high-yield capacity for specialized technologies.
Like what kind of things?
Well, they gave examples like N6RF Plus for smartphone radios, CMOS image sensors. You find those everywhere, phones, cars, and 22-nanometer MRAM, that's a type of memory, for automotive and industrial uses.
So even on the older lines, they're targeting specific high-value stuff.
Exactly. Not just commodity chips.
And they're definitely not resting on their laurels. They opened a new R&D center in Taiwan last year.
Crucial point. That constant R&D investment is what keeps them ahead. Their 3-nanometer tech hit high volume production in the second half of 23.
Already in high volume.
Yep. And they're already talking enhancements, N3E, N3P, N3X, expected to contribute even more in 2024.
Okay, but this is where it gets really interesting. 2-nanometer. They're saying volume production in 2025.
On track for 2025, yeah. And they expect it to be the most advanced out there for density packing in transistors and energy efficiency.
Using something called nanosheet transistors. What are those exactly?
Okay, so think of older transistors like fins controlling electricity. Nanosheets are like stacking multiple super thin fins on top of each other. It lets more current flow in the same area, so you get better performance, better efficiency, smaller space. It's a pretty big leap in
A
design.
major leap. And they're developing a special version too, N2 with backside power.
Right, specifically for high-performance computing, HPC.
What's the deal with putting power on the backside?
Well, traditionally, power and data signals share the same side. Moving power delivery to the back frees up room on the front for the important stuff, transistors, data interconnects.
Less traffic, basically.
Kind of, yeah.
Ah,
It can mean less resistance, more efficient power delivery, which gives you a performance boost, especially for really power-hungry HPC chips.
and that's coming soon.
Available second half of 2025, production ramps up in 2026. And get this, they're seeing stronger customer interest for this N2 than they did for N3 at the same stage, from both HPC and smartphone makers.
Wow. So the demand is huge.
Massive demand for that level of performance and efficiency.
And this whole focus on energy efficiency connects directly to their advanced packaging tech like 3D fabric, cowos, NFO. These are key for AI chips, aren't they?
Absolutely critical. Being able to connect multiple chips closely and efficiently,
Yeah.
that's what packaging does, is essential for complex AI processors.
They mentioned strong demand for cowos in 2023.
They did, specifically from AI chip designers. CoWoS is chip on wafer on substrate, basically stacking and connecting high-performance chips. And their other tech, TSMC SoIC.
System on integrated chips.
Right. That entered mass production in 23 too, also for next-gen AI. It lets them bond chips right at the wafer level. Even tighter integration, blue performance. It shows their approach, from the silicon right up to the final package.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Global manufacturing. They're clearly looking beyond Taiwan now. What's driving that?
Their stated strategy is to expand our global manufacturing footprint. Several reasons. Big one is customer trust, supply chain resilience, spreading things out geographically. Also tapping into new markets, new talent pools. And they do say customer needs and government support play a role, all aiming to maximize shareholder value naturally.
They gave updates on specific overseas fabs. Arizona first.
Yeah, the first fab there, they say it's on track for N4 production that's pretty advanced first half of 2025. And they're really stressing the quality will be identical to Taiwan.
That's got to be reassuring for customers.
Absolutely crucial. Consistency is key.
And Japan.
Correct.
Kumamoto.
Also on track. That's a 12-inch specialty tech fab due for volume production Q4 2024. And they've already announced plans for a second fab there. So, strong commitment to Japan.
Then there's the move into Europe.
Yeah.
Dresden, Germany. That's a big one, too.
Huge. It's a joint venture ESMC European Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. They're partnering with Bosch, Infineon, NXT, major European auto and industrial players.
Targeting those specific markets, then.
Exactly. Construction starts Q4 this year. It'll focus on slightly more mature but still critical nodes like 200, 822 nanometers and 1612 nanometer FinFET, aiming for production end of 2027. Around 40,000 wafers a month planned. TSMC holds 70% equity, and the total investment is expected to be over 10 billion euros. It's a major strategic move for the European market.
They did admit setting up overseas is more expensive initially. How do they plan to handle that?
They said they're confident to manage and minimize the cost gap. Probably means, optimizing operations, leveraging government support, maybe adjusting pricing over time, a mix of things.
Interesting. They also talked about digital excellence. What's that about?
Basically, using big data and AI across their manufacturing. The goal is boosting productivity, efficiency, quality.
More automation.
Yeah, shifting towards fabs being more engineer-centric rather than operator-centric, using AI for optimization, data-driven decisions, and the ultimate aim, being able to control and manage their global fabs from anywhere. Better customer support, too.
Right, let's look at the numbers for 2023. Key accomplishments, financials.
Okay, production first. They shipped 12 million 12-inch equivalent wafers. That's down from 15.3 million in 2022.
Reflecting that inventory correction.
Exactly. And this is key revenue from advanced tech 7 millimeters beyond actually grew as a percentage, went from 53% in 2022 to 58% in 2023. Shows their focus on the leading edge paid off.
So fewer wafers overall, but more value from the advanced ones,
Yeah.
still serving a huge range of customers.
Oh, yeah. Deployed 288 different process technologies, made almost 12,000 products for 528 customers. Massive scale. Their overall world semiconductor share, excluding memory, was 28%, down slightly from 30% in 22, again, due to that inventory adjustment.
Now, the headline financials. Revenue.
Consolidated revenue was NT 2,161.74 billion. That's down 4.5% year on year. Net income took a bigger hit, down 17.5% to NT $838.5 billion. EPS followed that trend.
And in U.S. dollars.
The drops look a bit bigger in USD. Revenue down 8.7% to $69.3 billion. Net income down 21.1% to $26.88 billion. Clearly shows that tough environment they mentioned.
Margins were down too then.
Yep. Gross margin was 54.4%, down from 59.6%. Operating margin fell to 42.6% from 49.5%. Net profit margin down to 38.8% from 44.9%.
Still pretty healthy margins, though, in the grand scheme of things.
Oh, absolutely. Still very strong profitability compared to many industries, despite the dip.
And kind of interestingly, they actually raised their cash dividends slightly. NT $11.25 per share from NT $11.
Yeah, that does signal confidence, doesn't it?
Oh,
Suggests they're optimistic about the long term and committed to shareholder returns, even after a tough year.
okay, let's pivot to ESG, environmental, social governance. Seems increasingly important for them.
It really does. They highlighted commitment across the board: green manufacturing, responsible supply chain, inclusive workplace, talent development, supporting local communities.
And they formed a dedicated board committee for it.
Yes, a nominating corporate governance and sustainability committee established Feb 2023 shows it's getting top-level attention.
And they moved up their renewable energy goals quite significantly.
Very ambitious move. Aiming for 100% renewables globally by 2040 now, brought forward from 2050. And they upped the 2030 target from 40% to 60%. That's a serious commitment.
They mentioned applying this to the new Dresden fab, too.
Yep, planning green manufacturing there with their partners.
There was also news about a leadership change.
That's right. Dr. Mark Liu, the chairman, plans to retire in June 2024. The board's recommending Dr. C.C. Wei, the current CEO, to take on the chairman role as well, while staying as CEO.
So a dual role pending elections.
Correct.
And TSMC seems to rack up quite a few awards and honors.
They do. Things like Forbes, World's Most Admired, being in the Dow Jones Sustainability Indices for 23 straight years. It speaks to, sustained excellence across the business.
Okay, looking forward now. 2024 outlook. Still lots of uncertainty out there.
They acknowledge that, yeah. Macroeconomic, geopolitical uncertainty isn't going away. But they expect their business to be really supported by that 3-nanometer ramp-up we talked about, plus the strong AI demand.
So overall.
They're projecting healthy growth for 2024.
And they see some recovery in end markets like phones and PCs.
Yeah, expecting demand there to pick up in the second half of the year. And they think that excess inventory in the supply chain should mostly be gone by mid-2024. That paves the way for growth later in the year.
What about the longer view, say the next 5 years?
For 2023 to 2028, they see the overall semiconductor market, excluding memory, growing at a high single-digit CGR. But, and this is key for them, they expect the foundry segment to grow even faster.
Why is that?
Few trends driving it. More fabless companies designing chips but not making them, more IDMs outsourcing production, and more big systems companies designing their own custom chips and needing a foundry like TSMC.
Makes sense. They broke down performance by market platform, too, the HPC.
High-performance computing saw a 14% unit decline in 23. Consumer PC weakness was the main drag, but servers and data centers were strong, mostly thanks to AI. For 2024, they see low single-digit growth, again, driven by AI demand and inventory normalizing.
Smartphones were down, too.
Yep, 6% unit decline in 23, blamed on inflation hitting spending, slower 5G adoption. Outlook for 24 is low single-digit growth, hoping for recovery in emerging markets.
IoT seemed a bit better.
A bit more resilient, yeah. Up 3% in 23, driven by things like smart health, retail tech. For 2024, they project stronger, high single-digit growth, with more AI being built into IoT devices.
Automotive had a good 2023 production-wise.
Yeah, car production was up 9% as supply chains eased. But they forecast a slight dip, low single digits, for 2024 due to economic headwinds.
But the long-term trend is still up.
Definitely. Greener, safer, smarter cars mean way more silicon content per vehicle. That's a long-term growth driver for them.
And lastly, digital consumer electronics, TVs, etc.
Down 3% in 23, weaker consumer demand.
It's really clear how central TSMC sees itself across all these tech markets. They kept coming back to their core values and that pure-play foundry model.
They really emphasize that. Integrity, commitment, innovation, customer trust, those are the values. And the pure play model, just manufacturing, not competing with customers by designing their own chips, they see that as a win-win. Builds trust, speeds up innovation for everyone.
The overview also had some deep R&D specifics aimed at the learner. Can you touch on some highlights there?
Sure. Beyond the 2nm and A14 nodes, they're pushing hard on next-gen EUV lithography. That's the tech for making ultra-fine patterns, working on things like advanced pellicles, masks, essential stuff for future chip making.
Specialty tech, too. RF.
Yeah, advancing RF for smartphones, but also for emerging areas like LEO satellites, autonomous cars. They mentioned developing RF PDKs.
Process design kits.
Exactly. Toolkits to help customers design RF chips optimized for TSMC's processes.
They're big in emerging memory, too, it seems.
Definitely. Volume production of RRAM resistive RAM for IoT. Developing next-gen RAM too. And they hit a world first with mass production of 22nm MRAM magnetor-resistive RAM.
Also non-volatile like RM.
Right, keeps data with power off. They're aiming for automotive-grade MRAM and smaller versions for future uses like smart vehicles, edge AI. Also working on stacking memory wafers directly onto logic wafers for HPC and AI, faster, lower power.
And those CMOS image sensors.
Yeah.
Sounded quite advanced.
It's very cutting edge. They mentioned risk production testing the process for a 3D MIM embedded alophic pixel.
Oh, life.
Lateral overflow integration capacitor basically allows much higher dynamic range capturing detail in both bright and dark areas. Great for high-end phones, ADS systems, and cars. Also working on sensors with better image quality, more sensitive light detectors called SICE-PAIDs for 3D sensing, and new infrared detectors for things like biosensing.
We mentioned advanced packaging before, but the R&D section had more detail on SOIC, cowos, NFO.
Right. For SOICs, they stressed its wafer-level front-end 3D IC. Stacking chips before they're cut allows incredible scaling for HPC, AI, mobile. They've got different generations improving connection density and handling heat.
NCOS to 2.5D TAC.
Still leading for ultra-high-performance AI HPC. They're in volume production of CoWoS for huge chip setups, developing CoWoS-L for even bigger scaling, aiming for production this year. And importantly, high-bandwidth memory like HBM3E is ready for both, with HBM4 support planned.
NFO is more for mobile.
Primarily, yeah. New generations coming for mobile, wearables, larger areas. They're also qualifying next-gen NFO with backside connections for integrating memory directly onto the package, ready this year.
And finally, R&D on design enablement, making it easier for customers.
Huge focus. They massively expanded their library of silicon IP, those pre-designed blocks, up 33% year over year to over 73,000 items, and provided tons of technology files and PDKs, over 48,000 files, 3,400 PDKs in 2023. Really smoothing the path for customers to use their advanced tech.
Okay, let's bring in that historical context from Wikipedia. It seems the Taiwanese government's role was absolutely fundamental in TSMC's creation.
It really was. Wikipedia outlines that government initiative back in the 70s to build a semiconductor industry. Key steps were setting up ITRI, the Industrial Technology Research Institute, in 73, and then getting that crucial tech transfer from RCA.
And inviting Morris Chang to head ITRI in 86.
Another pivotal moment, and TSMC itself, formed in 87, wasn't just a private startup. It was a spin-off from ITRI with huge government backing.
Funding, talent, land, policy.
Exactly. Initial investment came from the government, Philips, and Formosa Plastics. Apparently their first choice of name was taken, so they became Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Morris Chang was the first chairman.
And their first fab was actually rented from the government.
Yeah, within ITRI's campus. Shows how close those early ties were. They only returned it in 2002. Then came the stock listings, Taiwan in 94, NYSE in 97. Expansion like the Singapore JV in 2001. By late 2015, they were the world's biggest logic chip maker by capacity, now headquartered at Fab 12A in Hsinchu Science Park. Quite a journey, heavily enabled by that early government vision.
Okay, so let's wrap this up for you, our listener. TSMC clearly navigated a tricky 2023.
Definitely challenging for the whole industry.
But they really managed to capitalize on that huge AI demand, leveraging their tech leadership, advanced nodes, advanced packaging,
Those were key differentiators.
and their strategic moves, expanding globally, constantly investing in R&D. It really positions them strongly for the future, doesn't it?
Seems that way, yes. They're set up for continued growth.
So you should now have a much clearer picture of TSMC's recent performance, where they're headed strategically, and just how crucial they are to the whole semiconductor world, especially with AI changing everything.
Absolutely central role.
Now, here's something to think about. Given the increasing geopolitical complexities we're seeing and this relentless global race for AI dominance,
Yeah.
how might TSMC's strategy for global manufacturing need to evolve further in the next few years?
That's a big question. Balancing customer needs, government pressures, costs.
And what other tech breakthroughs, whether it's in the chips themselves or how they're packaged, will be absolutely critical for them to stay ahead?
The pace of innovation is just relentless.
Definitely something to mull over and maybe dig into more on your own.